Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square, Washington's state government reporter. And in today's episode, an exclusive update on fresh analysis of the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, the LEAD program, and a fascinating conversation with the co-creator of LEAD in Seattle and why she stands firmly behind its success despite this data that's been put out by Washington Policy Center and Eric Zimmerman. She shared some interesting insights with me today in a lengthy conversation that we had. I held my story from yesterday until today after she agreed to give us an interview this morning. Then more fallout from the Bite of Seattle shooting, the delayed press conference. You remember the night that it happened, and then the police chief being asked to submit his resignation and given a fat golden parachute on the way out the door. Well, City Council's Public Safety Committee members had a briefing yesterday and were not pleased at the lack of answers they were able to get, or not able to get, I should say, at yesterday's hearing with the mayor's office. My colleague Randy Diamond put up an article on this. We're going to share some of that exchange from yesterday's Seattle City Council Public Safety meeting. And then finally, it is, believe it or not, only 2 weeks until school starts in some parts of the state, including Spokane. But at just one school, there are more than 50 students who lost their homes in the August 1 fires, that complex of three fires over there. So, pretty incredible devastation. So, um, it's important to remember. It seems like it's, been forever already since this happened, right? Only 2.5 weeks ago, but those lives are rocked. And for kids, losing their homes, just important to, offer some insight on that today. So we're going to share a few of the details that we're learning. Now, in yesterday's episode of Washington in Focus Daily, we shared a Washington Policy Center analysis of a program that was founded in Seattle and King County to reduce arrests. Instead of prosecuting people when it's a drug-related crime, we can, if the person's willing and police agree, I won't forward, recommended charges here. Instead, if this person is willing to connect with the LEAD program, diversion program. So the idea being, don't fill up the jails with people committing drug-related crimes. If they've got a problem, maybe we can take this other course and keep them out of ever being incarcerated for the crime that they committed. But according to Washington Policy Center, the data and the success of the LEAD program is based on a lot of inaccuracies. And there's a 12-page analysis that I would encourage you to check out if you want to take a deeper dive on this. Again, this was Washington Policy Center's Eric Zimmerman put this up, and it's linked on his, there's a brief article, and then there's a link to the entire 12-page report that is, worth a look if you're interested. I reached out late yesterday to, or later in the day, to the lead architect of all these programs. Her name is Lisa Daugaard, former public defender in the city of Seattle. And by the end of the day, on Tuesday, she agreed to give me an interview this morning. So then I agreed to hold my article until I had an opportunity to listen to her. She was not pleased that Washington Policy Center put out this analysis, which, by the way, this is a national piece, could have some national implications for LEAD, which has been replicated in many other local jurisdictions, and states have taken on this program as well. She was not happy to not be consulted before the piece went out, but I did confirm with her, because Mr. Zimmerman at WPC told me he was supposed to have an interview with Lisa Daugaard on Monday, and she canceled that meeting. Now, she tells me that, yes, in fact, she canceled the meeting and was going to hope to reschedule into next week, but she did not know, she claims, that this analysis was coming out. And had she known that, that might have, I don't know if that would have, prompted her to not cancel the interview, but at any rate, she would have liked to have an opportunity to look at the analysis before it went out because there's going to be obviously a lot of backlash on the LEAD program and questions that probably should be asked and answered. She did admit one thing to me. One of the big data points that Zimmerman said was false was supporters with LEAD claim that the program reduces recidivism by 58%. So guys in with a drug related crime, whatever that was, and he goes into the LEAD program instead, 58% of the time, those folks are not going to commit another crime. It's going to end the cycle right there. But she conceded that that's actually an inaccurate data point, and in the future they will correct it. She appreciated WPC pointing that out. She told me it actually should be stated as reducing the likelihood of recidivism by 58% up against a control group. That gets a little bit nuanced, a little gray, if you will. So, likelihood of recidivism at 58% is apparently the correct data point they should be putting out there. So, here's another issue, the employment success that LEAD claims. I asked her a lot about this morning, and you're going to see her response because basically she said someone participating in LEAD um, maybe even gets, clean and sober while they're in the program, would ideally then be on a path to self sufficiency, maybe getting a job. But Lisa Daugaard told me today that employment is not even a stated mission for their program.
LEAD is not a jobs program, and it works with people many of whom are chronically, if not lifelong, disabled. But what it was trying to do, it's the core mission of LEAD is to reduce crime. And so we are interested in stabilizing lawful income. Jobs are only one way to do that. Enrolling people in public benefits or achieving other ways of folks not needing to be involved in illicit economic activity, selling stolen property, selling drugs, that is an objective. And so that's why, jobs was, if anyone had a job by the end of this as a result, that was a super neat story, not necessarily expected, not a stated goal of the program.
Critics of the LEAD program, including Ginny Burton, who runs Out Impact Coalition, argue that diversion programs like LEAD are anything but compassionate because they're not really requiring lasting change. Burton transformed herself after her final arrest at the age of 40, and she runs a 26-week curriculum with prisoners inside the Olympic Corrections Facility in Forks. And she talks about, you've got to get to the bottom of, people learning integrity, healthy relationships, accountability, so that then when they get out of prison, they can succeed and really be self sufficient. So here's Ginny Burton, critic of the LEAD program.
Is just keeping someone breathing and diverted from criminal justice a success metric? Why are we not looking to people who are actually solving the problem? What happens when you focus on a detail or a thing? Does that thing not sort of expand into our awareness? Does it, when we focus on the problem, and I think Seattle is a really great social experiment for this, does not the problem just continue to get bigger? Because when the focus is the problem, then we need more money to address the problem. Well, why are we not actually focusing on the solution? Why are we not looking to places and organizations and people that are actually solving the problem? And what does that mean? That means working directly with this specific subset of the population in a way that is intentional, helping them actually develop skills necessary for self-sufficiency, for the exit from dependency on public goods and services. It's 100% possible. I am living proof of it. I'm not an anomaly. I know thousands of people just right here in the state of Washington who do. As a matter of fact, LEAD specifically employs a significant amount of people just like me who are freed from the dependency of these problematic constructs. And they utilize them to communicate something. And a lot of these people were actually freed because of incarceration, mind you. So it's quite interesting to me what it is. It will, and I think that we need to look at it like this. The power of the word is unparalleled. So when you take a person who has destroyed their life and gotten back on track and doesn't have a lot of self-worth and believes that an industry knows more or better, it's really easy to drink that Kool-Aid and then parrot out those same vocabulary statements that suggest that this industry knows better, though the individual that is serving under the umbrella of that agency actually became free in complete opposition to their mission.
Now, as to housing, lead participants, some do get shelter as a result, but that's by and large taxpayer funded housing. I talked about that today with Lisa Daugaard, including those downtown hotels the city operates. Some of the lead participants are living in those facilities. Now, among the policy recommendations in Washington Policy Center's report, we'll put this up, says jurisdictions where lead has been adopted should pause the expansion of such programs, place programs into external audit by an independent program auditor, evaluate the use of alternatives, including baseline criminal justice and compliance dependent and residential treatment diversion case by case. So a lot more to come on this. I have a feeling there's going to be some attention paid to this by state lawmakers because of this wide analysis that WPC has put out and lead pushing to secure some additional funding for their program. All right, moving on. Angry Seattle City Council members questioned yesterday why Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson still doesn't have an answer as to why it took 5 hours after the bite of Seattle shooting to have that initial press conference. 3 people were killed in that event, several others injured. We have a young man, a 15-year-old who's in custody, and a 19-year-old who he exchanged gunfire with, apparently gang related, who ended up losing his life in that exchange. Now, Wilson announced yesterday, Mayor Wilson did, that she's asked the city's Office of Inspector General to conduct a thorough review. And until then, she's not really providing a lot of answers that the media and members of the city council have been urging. Councilman Dan Strauss really pressed hard on Allison Holcomb in yesterday's public safety meeting. She is the executive operations manager for Mayor Katie Wilson in her Office of Public Safety. Didn't get a whole lot of clarity in this exchange, and you could sense the growing frustration from these council members.
It's just that you mentioned that this is a charged environment at the moment. And I'm going to talk now about the police chief being asked to resign because it was similar in the way that Don Lindell was asked to resign. But the difference between Don and asking the chief of police to resign is Don runs a utility. She makes sure that our lights are on and that our rates aren't going up too high. But that same set of experiences that I had with Don Lindell being let go from the city occurred with Chief Barnes last week. With the most information that I've been able to be provided is that the mayor has a different window into the operations of the police department than the council does. Yet I haven't been told what she sees through that window. Why this is charged is there's 3 people dead. Why this is charged is that Seattleites went to sleep that night thinking that there was somebody indiscriminately killing people at the Space Needle. This is charged because the mayor asked the police chief to resign with very little information. And so the best that I can do is surmise that because there was some communication difference or difficulty that the chief was asked to resign. That's why this is charged. And this all could be avoided if there was clear, transparent communication from the start. And just like, back to you, Chief, I cannot thank you enough for not taking your attention off of finding these murderers, because we should be spending all of the time that we've spent this morning just focused on that.
Now, my colleague Randy Diamond put up a thorough article detailing how this whole exchange went down yesterday. I encourage you to check out the Center Square Washington page for that article. Now, finally, school starts in just 2 weeks in some parts of the state. It's hard to believe, but the recent fires destroyed so many homes for students in Spokane who go back 2 weeks from today. And families in the Indian Trail neighborhood are among the hardest hit. Hundreds of homes burned there when the Old Trolls fire jumped the Spokane River and really consumed those entire neighborhoods back on August the 1st. I'm sure you've seen the destruction. And we've learned now that about 50 kids in one school, Indian Trail Elementary, 50 kids in just that one school lost their homes. I'm guessing some of those are siblings, so it's not necessarily 50 homes and all, but can you imagine? It's going to be very challenging to get those kids back into any sense of normalcy. And yet the school day kind of provides that for a lot of kids who probably really are, struggling after losing their family home. There was a principal at that school who told KXLY she expects the number may be even higher. They have not been able to make contact with all of their families. So, um, just something to keep in mind as the school year begins that a lot of folks there are really, really struggling. And Governor Bob Ferguson has announced a new emergency declaration that's going to help victims and businesses affected by the fires. In all, we're still hearing a figure of 900 plus. I think 913 is the last figure that I heard of, mostly homes that were destroyed in those fires. So we'll be continuing to follow this in the weeks and months ahead, give you opportunities to help. Of course, the Red Cross is always, one of those organizations that really has kind of shown up and gotten right in the middle. Providing long-term shelter for many of these families is going to be, the initial challenge. And then also in Spokane, and my colleague Tim Clauser would be all over this if he wasn't on leave right now following the birth last week of his second child. So he's enjoying some much needed time with his new baby boy. But there is a major shakeup at the Spokesman-Review newspaper with the executive editor there, Rob Curley, who's been in that position for a decade, placed on administrative leave last Friday. There was an article up at the Spokesman-Review page today if you'd like to find out further detail. But apparently, something went down in the newsroom last Friday. They're not giving any specifics, but I don't know if this was the culmination of something. But to have the executive editor placed on leave is pretty significant. And there was a vote of no confidence taken on Monday by newsroom employees, and apparently over 90% of them said, yeah, we think this guy needs to be placed on leave and that we have no confidence in our executive editor. Newsrooms are always full of drama. So who knows everything that's been going on? Some sort of confrontation in the newsroom. There are often heated arguments between reporters and editors. I can attest to that on how a story should be covered. But apparently, this did have something to do with the way that some reporters at the Spokesman-Review have been covering the fires in the last couple of weeks. I'm sure there's been a lot of pressure in the newsroom there to be accurate, also tell the very personal stories of the lives impacted. So that's apparently what went down and what led up to this vote of no confidence in the executive editor at the Spokesman. It's going to be interesting to see how this evolves moving forward. Operations continue, they say, as normal. But in case you are a reader, consume their content online or otherwise get the paper, um, you might be interested in following that. So that is it. Today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for this Wednesday, August the 12th. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you again, hopefully, on Thursday.